Hi, everyone. Welcome to This Week. My name is Gloria, and I am today's host. It is great to be with you today. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with us, live or after the fact. This week is a live bi weekly show. It takes place every Saturdays at 2 p.m. UTC, 4 p.m. in Central Africa, and 5 p.m. in East African time. We chat about current affairs ranging from politics to pop culture from across the continent. So this means some of our stories touch on serious issues and others are comical. We welcome you to engage with us today in the comment section or at leadersofafrica.org/live. We also invite you to join our Discord community. You will find every detail on our website. And also, of course, hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube. We welcome you again to this show. It is great to be with you. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi, Gloria. Good to see you.
Hey. Yeah, welcome to the first this week of the month of February. Violet, how is your month going so far?
It is the month of love, so you can imagine it's going well. Thank you.
It's so wonderful to hear. Dan, how about you?
Interesting, so busy with a lot of engagement in Nigeria, and hopefully we'll get to discuss that today.
Of course. And as you know, as usual, there's a lot in the news. It's even hard to keep up, starting with COVID and everything else that's happening. So it's just a lot to keep up. But again, as usual, we'll focus on a few, 2, 3 stories that we'd like to discuss today. And yeah, tell me, what caught your attention this week?
Guys, have you heard of this new audiobooks app called African Echoes? So it's been set up by a Ghanaian entrepreneur, and his name is Haman Chineri Hesse. Forgive me if I butchered your name, but I'm just excited about what you've done. So back to the app. So this is an audiobooks app that is supposed to spread African storytelling to the rest of the world. And like we have always been saying, that we Africans need to tell our stories and tell our stories ourselves. This is one of the ways that this dream is coming true. And it's going to be done in different languages, and it's going to be able to be distributed widely, both on the continent and outside of the continent as well. So I'm excited.
I saw this story too, and I thought it was a really great idea. I'm just curious, how are they going to be able to reach everyone with the stories? So is it on a mobile app, or is it sort of going to be distributed from phone to phone using WhatsApp? How is that going to look like? How is that distribution going to play out?
Okay, so for starters, it's supposed to launch in March. So the next month. But however, it's going to be only available on Android for now. So all you iPhone lovers, sorry, but you'll have to wait a little bit. So it's going to be available on Android, and people will be able to download each story at a cost of $1 per download. But then it will be able to be distributed by Bluetooth, because we know that the continent has a lot of connectivity issues in regards to internet connection. So people will be able to share these stories even to those who do not have internet via Bluetooth. But for now, the primary way of accessing the stories is going to be by going to Play Store and downloading the stories from the app.
It's really interesting. I also heard them talking a little bit about the model or the approach, and it sounds like it's going to be, at least in the early days, more of a business model, right? So they have, a price for downloads, and also it seems like a price for the books as well. And one of the things I was curious about was whether this initiative is more on sort of the nonprofit social impact side, or is this more on sort of the business side? And I think that really takes into account also how the authors of the books are going to be compensated for their work, and how this is going to be sort of sustainable over a long time. Because like you, Violet, I felt like this was a really good idea in terms of sharing sharing stories and building upon this aspect of an oral tradition, and also people sharing these days WhatsApp notes back and forth, right? So we're used to accessing audio from our phones, so we have that ability there. So I thought it was a very good idea. I was just curious as to whether this was more of like social impact, nonprofit-esque approach, or whether this was another one of this business ideas, because I know the gentleman who's moving this forward is, right, isn't he a software entrepreneur, one of the biggest software designers in Ghana, right? So I was curious if this is more of another one of his business or entrepreneurial ideas.
From where I'm standing, Peter, it looks like one of his more business ideas, because I do understand the part about having people external to the continent accessing our stories. And for someone who lives maybe in the United States or in Europe or somewhere else, $1 might not be all that much to access, to download a story. But for people who are indigenous to the continent, there are whole families that spend less than $1 a day to feed the entire family, and even that is hard to come by on its own. So I find it quite difficult to imagine that they would have to choose between their basic needs and downloading a story. However, because of that sharing aspect through Bluetooth, and like you mentioned on WhatsApp, people might be able to actually access the stories without paying for them. Although, because I think that right now, at least in my opinion, it sounds like a more business-esque, type thing, that might hurt sales, because why would someone then want to go and download this story if they can wait for someone to download it and then share it to the whole village? So I don't know, but it feels like a business thing. Although, Peter, I must mention that the inventor did limit external investment, because he did say that it took less than $100,000 to build the whole thing, and it was because he wanted to keep it 100% African. So that gave me vibes of maybe, yes, it was more to the social entrepreneurial side, but at the same time, I do feel like because of the payment aspect, it does have, of course, a monetary component to it. I'm glad, though, you did mention how the people who send in their stories might benefit. So this is not yet clear, at least not to me yet, because apparently they're supposed to just record their stories through voice notes and then send them over. And then he and his creative team will determine which stories can then be put out and translated to different languages. But it's not yet clear how the originators of these stories will benefit. But that is an important question that needs to be asked, because I think they need to benefit from their stories.
It's very interesting. Of course, this is a brilliant story to have our stories told and translated in different languages. Like all of you, I also have so many questions about how this is going to play out and the money aspect of it. I'm just curious. I initially thought that $1 is to download the app, but it's $1 per story. Is that
per download? Yes, per story you download.
Okay, no, that's very interesting. And again, it clarifies for me the point that you just made. It might be expensive for some.
I am thinking $1 is okay, because I am someone who love audiobooks, because I listen to them when I'm like driving around. So, and sometimes buying an audiobook from Amazon, I pay like $14 for a book, right? So like it will be cheaper for some people. It will be expensive to some. But I think from the beginning, charging $1 will be okay, because they want to be able to sustain the project as they move forward. But I think as they move forward, they're going to find ways and means to make it accessible and also affordable to people in, like, say, remote places, in rural places, and also school children. Probably they'll get some grant to be able to give it to them for free. So initially, they have to find a way to sustain the project. And as you guys were saying, the people that record those books, the people that tell their story, also need some kind of compensation for the work they've done. So I think starting at $1 for me, it's okay for now. But I think as they move forward, they'll be able to know how they can distribute it widely.
Eva, I
Yeah,
think you
so
gave Herman a great idea of how to distribute this, right? Is to not just work one-on-one with people, but also think about institutions as well, like schools, right? So
Yeah.
the school
Mhm.
buys at sort of a bulk rate, and then they have access to the library, and the school children could
Yeah.
listen on, perhaps if it is even not just audiobooks, but also has the text version along with it, they can also read and also emphasize like local language education as well. So I think we're giving Herman some good ideas for his initiative. Not that he's already thought of these before, but really good idea, Eva.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so
Thank you. Yeah.
for me, I love this very noble idea. However, there are some concerns that I think they really need to look into. Nobody claims proprietary ownership of any stories. And that is why the oral tradition has been one of the longest surviving traditions in Africa and elsewhere, even in the Arabian Peninsula. Because when you go into the Arabian Peninsula, one of the distinguishing elements of their history, particularly during the area that historians dubiously call the medieval era, is his capacity to retain, to relate a lot of stories, memorize a lot of things, orally. And the way that oral tradition survives is that people are able to tell the story from generation to generation. And nobody claims proprietary ownership of any such stories.
Hmm.
Now, when you convert such an important cultural element, such an important common history owned by people into commodity, because the stories are being converted into commodity. And now some people will say, I'm telling this story and I'm making money. Then the problem is that the person might have heard the story from someone. So who is the real owner, the
Hmm.
proprietary owner of that particular story? This is one issue. And when you extend it a little bit, you begin to see another areas where gray area that they possibly need to look into. I tell a story, somebody listened to the story and converted the story into a book. The person who converted the story into a book is the person going to be committing, violating the say to say acclaimed proprietary ownership that the owner of the software and the person who told the story, is making, because these are some of the gray areas where they need to sit back and sort out the issue. And about the issue of the finances involved, what is the power asymmetry? When I tell a story and you provide the platform, do I have the ability to negotiate the percentage of the money that comes to me? Because I believe these are some of the intricacies, salience that need to be sorted out before they can actually, move forward. Because I could see some potential litigations coming out of this. A very brilliant idea, but it appears to me that there are some key areas that need to be sorted out, and so that this big idea, this robust idea, won't be lost into the intricacies of some of these potential controversial issues.
Mm-hmm. No, Ghana, I
Yeah.
think those points are really important, particularly so the issue of ownership and how that intersects with the oral tradition. And I think this obviously is a different direction, and it raises some complication. In some ways, it purports to preserve the oral traditions, right? So the entrepreneur is emphasizing that as sort of a key element of this, preserving stories, preserving the oral tradition, and building on that, right? But at the same time, it's really embracing the commodification and the capitalist venture that has been surrounding the publication and sharing of books and other intellectual properties in this way. And of course, I guess I think that's something that has to be worked out, and I think it's worth talking about. I will say, though, that many authors are beginning to make money on larger scales, maybe not dealing and sort of suggesting that they're interacting with oral traditions, but they're making a lot of money off their books, right? So we have a number of African authors who have made lots of money on the international stage for the books that they've been sharing. So perhaps this is a small way of allowing them to get into that process that has been largely dominated by the educated elite when it comes to sharing their stories, sharing their perspectives in the form of books, right? But I still think, that aside, I still think that your points are really important here.
Yeah, very interesting. But just some details for people watching at home who are curious. When is the app going to be ready for download? And what are some of the first languages that people can look out for?
So I do know that it will be ready in March next month, and I do know that right now they are dealing in languages like Yoruba, Amharic, and Swahili. Those are the three languages that were highlighted. But as we all know, Africa is really a melting pot of languages. So definitely a very huge chunk of the population is going to be excluded at the beginning. But with time, they will be included in the mix. But even with time, we know that that's not going to be something that's a fit that's going to be easily overcome, because even with the inclusion of more languages, there are still more languages. So that is going to be one of the biggest challenges for this venture. And Ghana, you really raised very great points, but at the same time, with the way the world is evolving, I feel like oral tradition is dying out, because in the olden days, our families were not really nuclear families that were extended, and people would sit down in the evenings by the fireplace, and then you'd have your grandfather or an elder tell you stories. But now families are more nuclear and spread out. Our parents are working full time, even the mothers are working. So the children are being educated by television sets in many households and video games. So no one is really passing down these stories anymore. And even with the promulgation of like cultures, we find that many children on the African continent, especially the middle class and the elite class, are having to read bedtime stories and storybooks from like Western countries. So where does that leave our own African stories? So while this might have issues, I really do think that it is a step in the right direction, even though these kinks need to be worked out, because in a way, if we can't sit down by the fireplace and tell these stories, then the digitization of these stories might be the new fireplace, because technology is taking over, and I don't see us really going back in the direction that we've come from. But these are issues that really need to be worked out, or else it may cause problems down the line.
And this reminds me of one of the ideas that I pitched when I was a student at the University of Lagos. And that was way back in 2004. I was trying to introduce some element of storytelling into the university arena, because I was really, I wasn't really happy with the overt westernization of folks at the university. I believe we're losing our African identity. Then I pitched this idea to a friend who now works in one of the government entity in the United States. I said to him, I said, Femi, let's incorporate this idea of storytelling. But we have this very big amphitheater, and that I was going to be dressed as an elderly man, bring folks around and tell them stories that enables them to appreciate our history, our struggles over time, and how we're able to overcome those struggles, to tell them stories that people need to be proud of their poor background, because we begin to realize that on our campuses that particularly, apologies for this, the ladies weren't proud of their poor background. They weren't ready to say that my father works as a security man, my mother is a petty trader. They wanted to live this false life. And then I was telling folks that this has tendency to gravitate in the negative direction in the next 10, 5, 15 years. And when I look back, some of the issues that I raised, which I was in my first book, the youth liabilities and responsibility, is that we are going to get to a stage that money becomes the defining element of whatever matters to every single individual in Nigeria. And when I heard about this story, this was one of the things that came to mind. And the other thing that came to mind is this: it could actually be an empowerment mechanism for folks in the rural area. But however, a deterrent to the realization of this is the elite capture. Because therefore, in the rural area, doesn't know how to tell the story, doesn't even know how to do the app. Record something, put it in the app. So the issue now is that, are they going to be engaging folks in the rural area, just like BBC's story? BBC folks, whether you speak English, you do not speak English, they've been able to create that platform. And these are potential businesses that other people might want to look into. We set it up in a different way. We focus on rural folks, because when a rural folks makes $50 for every single download of a story. That is a huge financial capability enhancement mechanism for that rural man who has a repository of stories in his brain and is able to tell the story in a way that is animated, that people can have a lot of learning point. So I see this as a potential development tool that other people can lash into in the development arena to help address the problem of poverty in our various rural communities in different African countries.
Yeah, I
Wow.
completely agree with you, especially on the issue of elite capture, because when those stories are recorded from all over the continent, they'll be sent to the creative team and they will decide which stories are told. So I'm just wondering, so whose stories get to be told and whose stories do not get to be told, and what is the criteria on deciding whose stories are told and whose stories are not? So there's still a lot of questions and certainly issues that need to be worked out, but I do agree that it is a step in the right direction, but the issue of elite capture is real and it's one that really needs to be talked about further.
Yeah, well, of course, there are more ways in which this idea can still be developed, as we discussed here already. Just from this discussion, we saw so many different ideas came out of it. So we hope that people are watching, those that are creating this app, and pick some of our ideas that we just discussed here. But I totally agree with Violet that it is a step in the right direction. There's so many loose ends to address, but definitely we need to move in that direction of digitizing our stories, our material, and our culture. Great stuff. What else was in
So
the
I
news
had
this week?
So I had some things that I've seen people talk about this week surrounding the issues of inheritance. And I think this goes back to this similar theme that we're talking about, sort of the intersection of tradition as well as other forces that may shape tradition or have tradition play out in different ways. So it's in this same genre. So one of these perennial issues, particularly in certain contexts, in this case, this issue has been played out particularly in the community of Igbo people living in Nigeria, in sort of in some parts of Nigeria, all throughout Nigeria, but particularly in the eastern parts of Nigeria, is this issue of inheritance and women's inheritance, right? And traditionally, there are some rules that suggest that when somebody in the family dies, so the head of the household dies, that the property is not distributed equally, but rather goes to some of the males in the family, right? And that means that this bypasses the eldest, the firstborn, if that firstborn is a woman, right? And this has led to a long period of discussions, both within communities as well as in the legal community, as well as legislatively, about what people should be doing when it comes to inheritance. And so this issue has come out as a number of stories. A number of women has sort of pushed for them to realize their inheritance rights. And that's what's been in the news in a number of different places over the last, I would say, a few weeks, including in the last week.
So, Peter, let me ask you. I think I came across a story where there was a court order regarding this particular issue.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So as I mentioned, this intersection between sort of the legal system of Nigeria and then the traditional practice, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has actually made a ruling. And it's kind of an interesting story because it was a case that began all the way back in the 1980s, this discussion started, right? So this woman was actually pushing for these inheritance rights, and through a long process. So it was a long process, a court process that finally got settled in, I believe it was 2014, where the Supreme Court said, that women have equal rights to inheritance, right? Now, of course, when a court makes that decision after a very long, lengthy conversation, both legally and within communities, when a court makes that decision, doesn't mean that it's going to be applied everywhere and that everyone is going to accept that decision. In fact, in some cases, courts oftentimes rule years in advance where the population is on a given issue. So a lot of the Igwes or chiefs in communities, some of them said, this is a great decision and we intend to apply it. In fact, some chiefs were already applying this in advance of the court decision. But then some of the chiefs were saying, we're not going to apply this decision, and have pointed to the fact that many people in the community disagreed very vehemently with this court decision, right? And so we see even to today, and that's why this is a debate and why it caught my eye, it's this continual debate, not only between the population and the citizens in communities, but also between the Igwes themselves, about sort of arguing amongst themselves about who is doing the right thing and pointing to the benefits of one way or the other, right? And so I think it's a really interesting case, again, of how tradition is sort of navigating this push for that we see of equal rights or women's empowerment.
Wow, this is really interesting. And I feel like it goes, in my opinion, I feel like it goes back to really human greed and power consolidation, because that is not just specific to Nigeria. It's in Uganda, it's in so many other African countries because of the patriarchal system. And mostly the argument that is given is, oh, yeah, girl, you're going to get married, so you're going to go and build wealth at your husband's place. Actually, when someone has children, it doesn't matter if they have 30 daughters, they have no children until they have a male child. They will literally marry all the women in the village just to have a male child. So that shows you how deeply rooted this is. And from a young age, yes, I remember I was always told, you don't need to study that much, because as soon as you just need enough English to, make you pass through, and then you just need to find yourself a husband, and then that's it. Because actually you're looked at as more of a commodity. When you're given away in marriage, you're expected to bring in dowry so that your brothers can marry wives and expand the clan. So you're basically, should I say, capital asset that's supposed to be given away in exchange for, dowry that your brothers can use to expand your father's compound. So that is why I see it being rejected at such a grand scale. And for a while, I was trying to think about it in my mind and saying, okay, what if it came down to the fathers, and a father sat down and said, well, this is my daughter, this is my child. Why would I want to not leave her anything? And yet she is my child. I love her. Maybe I need to leave her something. But then when I think about the other aspect of, okay, but if I give my daughter this, when she gets married, she's just going to go and give it to her husband. It's going to benefit another clan or another compound or another home. Then it's more likely that father is likely to shut down his emotional side, even though they love their daughter, and say, no, I cannot give you an inheritance. Your husband is expected to provide for you. So there's just a lot of intricacies in this issue.
Yeah, so what I really applaud about the lady is resilience, because it takes a lot of resilience to push through a case from 1980s until now. Just 2 days ago, a friend's property was demolished in Lagos, and he passed the court down to me, and I said, litigate the issue. They said he wasn't going to get justice. And I said, you need to be resilient. What my friend lacks is what this woman has displayed. And she didn't challenge the tradition. And that's one thing that is very important. What she's saying is that it's not an issue of the tradition per se. It's an issue of misconstruction of the tradition. Because if she has declared a war against the tradition, chances are that she might not even have won the case. But she was like, hey, I'm as important as any members of the family. The same father gave birth to me the same way he gave birth to the other folks who were male. Whatever right they have to the property of this man is the same right I should have to the property. And interestingly, a lot of things have been changing. Some of these Igwes, they are, I don't want to use the word better educated, because I don't want education to be used in this very restrictive language of Western education. Yeah, they are beginning to understand that, no, these things are some of the fundamental issues that need to change. That being a woman does not mean that somebody should be looked down. And it's not definitive of patriarchy. But when you get down to the Yoruba culture, where we have a patriarchal system, female can inherit their fathers. When you go to the Awusa region in the northern part, the same thing applies, despite the fact that male are considered the head of the family. So it's just an issue that I believe that with time, better education, constructive engagement, a lot of things will change in that direction. And I see it happening. And you know the good thing about this? Everybody's applauding this judgment. Nobody is saying, oh, I'm an Igbo, I'm not celebrating this judgment. And it's one of those judgments that unite us as a people. And it's very important, particularly at this moment where Nigeria is going through a lot of ignoble rhetorics of hate and division. And I really applaud it. I love it because it came at the right time.
Yeah, and so the decision, just to emphasize, so the final decision, so this case started in 1981, or this discussions in 1981 with a lady named Gladys Ada Ukeji. That's the lady that was appealing for the inheritance when her father died. The final decision was handed down in August of 2014. And what's also interesting about the outcome of the case, just building on what Ghana said, it was a unanimous decision, right? So this was, unifying for the country, but also a unifying sort of decision for the Supreme Court itself, right? That is sending a clear message that this is, where Nigeria is on this issue. And I just want to put up just a couple of public opinion pieces from Nigeria related to this issue of sort of equal inheritance. So if we look at this question, so this comes from the Afrobarometer survey, the round 7, the most recently public released round 7. And so they ask a question, whether you disagree or agree with a statement. And the statement is, in our country today, women and men have equal opportunities to own and inherit land. You can see that 56% agree or strongly agree with this statement, and 39%, so nearly 4 in 10, disagree or strongly disagree that women and men have equal opportunities to own land. So you can see that you see that there is a bit of disagreement on this point that is there, as we've been describing. And then one last piece that may be of interest to our audience is this other question that asks, how well is the government handling the promotion of opportunities and equality for women? So how is the government doing on this? And again, a very mixed picture. Some say very well, fairly well, but a majority, 51%, by a small margin, say very badly, fairly badly. And so I think this shows you that both in terms of the normative issue about what should be secured as rights, there is a vast amount of disagreement, right? That we can see there. We also see a lot of disagreement about how the government should and should not be involved in shaping the opportunities for women and equality. And I think, as we've been talking about already, one of the fundamental aspects of equality is inheritance rights, is the right of property, as also what Violet says, this sort of interpretation or misinterpretation of women as commodities in this sense, right? So this is at the foundation of this discourse. So I think it's quite interesting. And again, this comes from Afrobarometer round 7, and this is just Nigeria. So this isn't all countries. This is just the data from Nigeria.
I just want to say, of course, it's a good thing that the court unanimously voted in favor of the young girl. But based on the survey that you just put out there, Peter, you can just see that these are strongly held beliefs. And there's only so much that the court order can do. It's a wonderful thing that government is moving in this direction. But I think what needs to be done is engagement with community leaders, because that's where the problem is. And these are the people who have the influence in the community, in the rural areas, to start changing mindset. Like Ghana said, there are aspects of our traditions that are good, that are positive, that we can keep, but there are definitely things that need to be changed. And I think this is the message that needs to be shared in community areas and in rural areas, that we can look at these things differently. There's a better way of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, I strongly agree. And I strongly agree. One of the things that I was just thinking about as you guys were talking about is, like, in terms of the household too. You get it? Like the father. Because it happens that most people died without writing a will. So that become an issue. So we have to follow the tradition to split the properties, and it has to solely go to the man. So I am just thinking about the fact that it will also be good, one, if there is an education going on at the household level too. As you guys, Violet just said, the community level. Yeah, the community level plus the household. Because the father has to understand that the female and the male are the same. They're the same blood, they're the same relative. And if you die without a will, it's going to cause a problem in the long run. So I think families need educations too, so that even if they don't come out with any, they die and they don't have any will there, from the beginning, they have to make it clear that in this family, we share everything, right? So if I died without a will, you have to share everything. I think that understanding too have to come in, because it looks like most family don't talk about some of these things. So when they die, then the elders come in to impose a tradition. And one thing I was just thinking about is, why will a brother just not give something to the sister, looking at the situation of the sister? You get it? Because the story, when I read the story, was like the lady has to stop the university because she couldn't fund her own education, even though the inheritance that was left was a lot and there was a lot of money involved that could help her and her other younger siblings, female siblings, to go to school. But the brother decided not to do it. So for me, I feel like there has to be a lot of education going on at the family level. Yes, the brother, if the brother inherits the things and he becomes like the head of the household, then the traditional leaders have to tell the brother, that the male head of household, that you have to take care of your sisters. You get it? You have to take care of them to a point that they also have their profession, they also have their work, and they are on their own. But if you leave the thing that the boy takes everything, then the situation comes in, because he feels like he is the one in charge. He can sack anyone from the house who disagree with them. So I also think that there has to be a lot of education done in terms of how these things are dealt with.
Yeah, on the point of the will that you raised, Eva, one of the concerns that many people have with writing a will is that it projects one's end of life, right? And by writing it down on paper that's saying, when I die, right? God forbid, that I die, right? We don't want to have a conversation about that. We don't want to invoke the potential that could happen in any ways, right? And we may be chuckling a little bit now, but in many ways, this is serious for some families. But I think, Eva, you've highlighted a key way for the conversation to begin to happen in the household is around like the distribution and setting norms and putting those down on paper. Because once the head of the household passes on, the father passes on, all these issues are up for grabs, and it's whoever is more powerful in the family who is able to sort of influence people in the family as well as the community for support for any decisions that are being made. And so that has to happen when people are alive, when they're well, and they're able to have those discussions and those norms. So I think that's an important consideration.
Wow, but the thing is, we will all die if people. It's a good idea to write a will. If you get a chance, do it. Nobody's gonna be here forever, and it helps
Well,
people.
they don't want to accelerate it.
Oh, sorry, Violet.
I'm saying, they don't want to accelerate the process by writing a will.
No, these are some of the mindset that need to be dealt with. Anyways, very interesting story. But I love that Peter mentioned, we were discussing the story in Nigeria, but this is the case in many other parts of Africa. Many countries experience the same thing. And again, there's so much work that needs to be done in this area. Interesting. What else came up in the news this week?
Yeah, this week I have a lot of issues going on, but one thing that caught my attention has to do with a group of farmers who, for the first time, won a lawsuit against like one of the major big oil corporations in Nigeria, that is like Shell. In Nigeria. So this case has been going on for the past 13 years. The farmers have accused the oil company, that is Shell, for pipe leaks. Like Shell have had issues of pipe leaks that have destroyed a lot of the environment, especially their fish farms have been destroyed because of the oil spilled on the land. And they've been going back and forth with the company to do something about it. They've not done anything about it. So fortunately for this group of farmers, they had environmental groups within Nigeria and also an environmental groups from the Netherlands that is called Earth Friends of the Earth, who came together and advised the farmers to file a lawsuit in the Netherlands against the company, because Shell is like a Dutch and a British company. So when they did, they actually won the case. It's been like going back and forth for 13 years. So the court in Netherlands ordered Shell to pay these farmers compensation. So we are yet to see the outcome of it and how it's going to, where it's going to go. But to the farmers, it's a victory that they've been able to win a legal case against this big corporation.
It's very interesting, the story about Eva. The court is in the Netherlands. I'm just curious, was the Nigerian government involved in any way into this process?
The story didn't really make it clear, but I think from the beginning, the Nigerian government may have been involved. But from the story, it looked like in the Nigerian law, it talks about the fact that if the oil spill is done by sabotage, because that was what the company was claiming, that individuals sabotage their pipelines. So that was the result for the oil spill. So if that is the case in the Nigerian law, then the company is not liable. But when they took it further to the court in The Hague, they said that the company couldn't prove that. So because they couldn't prove that, the farmers, they have to compensate the farmers for that.
Yeah, so this is where it becomes very interesting. Because you have to prove in law beyond reasonable doubt that it wasn't as a result of sabotage. And, all these multinational, particularly the oil companies in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, they've been committing these atrocities over the years. You may want to recall the death of Kensa Wiwa, an environmental activist. He was fighting this kind of cause. Because when you go there literally, you can't farm at all. And that was the origin of kidnapping in Nigeria. Because we need to put this in context, not necessarily because kidnapping has always been there as a point of correction, even during the, before Nigeria became Nigeria. Some people will kidnap for their kings and that they will make money. But in the modern time, kidnapping became a tool of agitation when people became helpless against some of these companies who polluted their waters, who have polluted their farmland. And all of these things have affected their overall livelihood condition. A polluted land means the sources of poor water, the sources of underground water may be polluted as well. And with that likely to mean that people might be drinking potentially carcinogenically infiltrated waters, and a lot of assaults from this. And the only way people were expressing their reaction against this was by kidnapping. Some people, if they have the resources, they will go for that, take issue to court. But it's so difficult for them to get justice in Nigeria because they have the financial resources to bribe their way. They have the financial resources to bribe their way. I'm so glad that they were able to get justice through the Hague. But is this going to be a force? Nobody knows. There's another problem. It's one thing to get the judgment, because if this is enforced, I foresee some potential, cases going in that direction. Some of these multinational companies that are polluting here and that have been affecting the health condition of people in their places of location, people might begin to see hope in Hague. And what I feel where people should get hope should be from the courts in our various countries in Africa. Because that is telling us that we have a functional judicial system that is ready to rule in the favor of the oppressed. But when it is coming from to me, that's another form of saying that we can't do it ourselves. It goes back to this colonial problem I've only had issue with. But it's good for the farmers. It's good for the affected people. And that's just one of the things that I really applaud about this. Another way, that's a big plus for us, for a largely divided country. Look at the case of herdsmen in Nigeria, and it has personally affected my well-being. The way the argument, the direction of the argument. Now the Yorubas are saying they have to expunge the Fulanis from southwestern Nigeria. Are these not Nigerians? They're all Nigerians. If we can have a judicial system that addresses the causes of problems like this, I'm very sure many of the issues that are dividing us as a people wouldn't be dividing us as a nation. It's a plus for the farmers. I'm always advocating for the farmers, and I'm so happy it happened, but I'm not happy when it happened to here. If it has happened to Nigeria, I would have loved it the most. But we have this future as a country.
Very valid point. That is why I was actually asking, where was the Nigerian government in all of this? What role did they play in this case? But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Eva, you can go.
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is that it looks like the case has been going on for the past 13 years. And actually, this is like the first time a group of farmers have come together and said that we want to take this up. And fortunately for these people, they got help from advocacy group, environmental activists who came in, and also they had it caught international attention. So an environmental activist group also in the Netherlands came together and was like, we have to push this. But you should understand that this case, oil spilled in Nigeria, has been going on since the 80s. Like, it's been going on for so long that the people in the community have no power. Sometimes I'm sure that if it happens, the companies just go and bribe their way through the community, give some money to them to silence them, and nothing is done, and they keep going doing it. But if you see the damage that has been caused, it's going to take over 25 years to clean it up. And it's going to involve a lot of resources, a lot of money. And even if it's a sabotage and they saw that there was an oil spill in the first place, what do they have to do? They have to go and block it and fix it as soon as possible. But they didn't. And this has been going on for so long, forever. And they are still making a lot of money from that same land that they are polluting. So for me, it's about the persistence of these farmers, that they didn't feel like this a big corporation. They are going to pay their way through the judiciary system, so they have no voice. They persisted, they move on, and their tenacity has been able to result in this case. Shell is so disappointed in the rulings because they felt like they've not been treated fairly, and because they are saying that it was a sabotage, but they couldn't prove it. Like, how did anyone went to sabotage it, the community or anything? They couldn't. So for me, it's a big case. And I'm sure that this is going to be enforced, because these farmers, the fact that they've gone back and forth for 13 years and they've won this case, I'm sure that they're not going to sit there and wait till Shaw give them the money. They are going to move on. And also Shaw is supposed to clean the environment. And I'm sure that they are going to continue to push for that. But as Ghana said, it's really sad that we couldn't have the judgment in Nigeria. The Nigerian government couldn't come in to sort this out. And what is the case? Why is our judiciary system not fighting for the oppressed in our own lands, right? And they have to take it elsewhere before they will seek justice. So there's a lot of things going on and which we really need to address. But for me, it's a step in the right direction that right now, these farmers winning this case have proved that, have proved that there is hope, and they can continue to fight in case they feel like they've been oppressed or an injustice has been melted against them. And it's not just the Niger data. Anywhere, like not just in Nigeria, but a lot of places in Africa has been affected by oil spill. And also not just around the Niger area and just two communities, but also the Ogoni land too has had the same issue. And the Ogoni people too, they took the case to the court, but for them, there's yet a ruling to come, because they also have to come up with substantial evidence, because the company said that their own was sabotaged. So they are also gathering a lot of information to be able to get the right judgment. So I'm sure that a lot of communities in Nigeria from this ruling will come out to pursue legal cases or legal charges against Shell and any other oil company that caused major spill on their land.
But is this
And what-
strategic? Is this a strategic thing coming back to the court that is chosen, right? So people who are seeking redress have a choice. And so they're venue shopping for various different reasons. And I can think of two explanations that are ones that do not sort of challenge the legitimacy of Nigerian's court system, or do not perhaps say that Nigerian court system could not use it. But one of their strategies may be to get a more international recognition of the concern, right? And so by going to an international court, it's a larger issue. And the environmental activists also want this case to send a message on a broader level, right? So that's one reason why you may say, let's go to an international court. The second way I can think of is the compensation that may be involved here, right? So when you do it in a domestic court, a lot of times the government's going to take a lot off the top, right? They're going to excise their fines, and they've done that quite a lot. And that's not going to trickle down to the local people. So there is a concern not with the court and what the judgment will be, but what will be the compensation, what will be the follow through afterwards. And they want more eyes on that and more attention, more transparency. So they're going to go to an international court. So I just want to be clear that it's not that the Nigerian court couldn't make a good ruling in this case, right? And that those domestic courts shouldn't be used. But it is the case, not only in Nigeria, but also broadly, that activists and those who are the advocates for those that have faced environmental degradation make these strategic moves that can actually amplify their voice on a more global stage. So I think that may be at play in this case as well.
Peter will push a little bit back on one of those issues, and your belief in the Nigerian court system is one of the most corrupt court systems you have in the world.
I'll say this, Ghana, just let me jump in. I didn't say that it wasn't corrupt or not. I just said that in a theory it could handle this, but I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. I just want to be clear. Yeah, go on, Ghana.
Yeah. What I didn't love about the way the issue was handled was the peaceful approach. The folks who prosecuted the case, they saw hope in litigation. They didn't take laws into the hands. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't kidnap anybody in order to force justice. And I think this is the lesson for us in the country that is largely divided now. There have been some concerns about the herdsmen. And people have been looking at these issues from a highly ethnicized perspective. There have been allegations, real and imagined, exaggerated as well in some cases, of farmlands that belongs to people from other parts of the country that have been invaded and taken over by some of the herdsmen who are of Fulani extraction. And recently there was a case of somebody who's been offering his services to politicians as a tout, as a political dog, who became the poster boy for the Yoruba people. There was a case that they said, the Fulanis are kidnapping us, the herdsmen are kidnapping us. And rather than call to a court system, rather than litigate the issue, this individual took laws into his hand by giving eviction orders to Nigerians, that he gave them eviction order that they have to relocate from a particular place. And when the eviction deadline passed, he went there and he forcefully took over the place from the Serikin Fulani, who lost his children, no less than 8 cars, no less than property worth of close to 500 million naira. And at the end of the day, he did it in his own way, and he started using this ethnic rhetoric of division. And that has further deepened the hatred in the country. And when I look back at the case that was won in age, it's to point out to the fact that when we follow the legitimate route to addressing issues of concern, we preserve our unity. We also gain as well, making bad examples as deterrent to other people. I would want the Yorubas, where I am from, to learn from this case, that the language of rhetoric, the language of hatred, will not lead us to our destination as a country. It will only take us back. If there are concerns that some people land have been illegally taken over by some people who are rearing livestock, by some nomadic livestock rearers, then the thing is that if you have the evidence, take it to court and litigate. Don't let us put the country on fire. And this one such example that if you cannot get justice from within, you will be able to get justice from outside. And I really applaud the decision of this farmer to go this route because it's telling us what we can do domestically and how we can leverage the international community, not intrusively in this sense. Because the way they leverage the international community is not intruding on the national sovereignty of Nigeria. But at the end of the day, speaking like better for the people of Nigeria. So to me, that's one of the lessons from this case that from this court victory. And I hope our people will learn from this because I'm really negatively affected by the development in the people. When people kill in the name of an ethnic tribe, that to me is a genocide committed by the Yorubas in the name of the Yorubas against the Siriki Fulani and other people who has been killed by Sunday Igboho and his gangs that are moving across the country in the name of fighting injustice.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I guess you don't appreciate this Sunday who's been going around to different parts of Nigeria telling the local communities and the governors and the officials, I can clean up your problem by removing the Fulanis. It sounds like a really concerning situation. And just building on what you mentioned, Ghana, this gentleman is now claiming that the state government is wanting them to come into certain areas to clean up areas. The state government is like, no, we didn't say we needed your help, and we don't want to engage in this process. And I think you hit the nail on the head, so to speak, which is that, there are legal processes, there are ways of doing community dialogue that are peaceful, that are legal, and those need to be the ones that are being embraced. Now, if there are concerns that are being raised, and obviously the herdsman issue is one that has been an issue for some time now. If there are concerns, then there needs to be legislation and national dialogue around that to give a real framework for dealing with some of these concerns that communities have, right? And I think that's an important thing to reflect.
Absolutely. And it's very encouraging that the state government is distancing itself from this Sunday individual, because we know how ethnic conflict pan out when they're not, dealt with seriously. We have Ethiopia right now, who also is going through a crisis, and we all remember Rwanda. So I applaud the state government for actually coming out there and say no, they don't want any help from this Sunday person.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking about is that this is like a very difficult situation. And you don't want to move in a direction of making it an ethnic problem, because the moment you make it an ethnic problem, it's going to turn into something else. So I'm just thinking about this would be very good for them to address it at the community level. The Fulani people have elders. The Yoruba people have elders. You have the security agencies. You also have the government, the governmental authorities and things like that. I think these entities need to come together and talk and come up with an agreement. And also, if there is a need for them to create some form of like a boundary or demarcation as to where the farmers, the Fulani herdsmen will let their cattle graze instead of them on people's farm. You get it? So I just feel like they have to really sit down and talk about this issue, because this thing has been going on for so many years. When I follow the news in Nigeria, there's always something that has to do with the Fulani herdsmen and farmers having problems, because this has also been an issue in Ghana. It's not just in Nigeria. Ghana has also had situations where there have been fights between farmers and some of the Fulani herdsmen that are living in Ghana, taking their cattle to people's farm to graze, destroying things there. So actually, there have been times that there have been crashes and some people have died, and the security agencies and parliament have to come in and talk about ways to address it. Recently, I've not heard anything that has come out. Like, I've not heard any crashes between the farmers and the Fulani herdsmen, but this is an issue that has been going on, and they've been trying to resolve them at the community level, talk to the elders for them to come up with a solution. Because, the Fulani herdsmen, they are nomadic people. They move from one place to the other. Where they see is green, they go there. So they have to advise them, like talk to the elders, because some of these herdsmen that are going around are just children. Some of them use their children, the youth. young people to do some of these things. So it would be good for them to engage the elders so that they talk to the young people. If you go to this place and you see it's a farm, you will know when it's a farm. You don't take the cattle there. Take them to elsewhere. There are plenty of land so that there is peace. I think that is the approach that the agencies have to adopt, and also the police. I mean, what is the security forces? What is Parliament doing about it? This is the thing that the Senate need to come out with a bill to address some of these things, a policy to address some of this issue. We want our local government to also work. They need to step up in their case. They are community leaders, but we also have the local government, the governor of the state also need to step up to make sure this is addressed, because you don't want, this has been a case that has been going on forever, but you don't want to move forward and having the same problem over and over. This thing need to be addressed and addressed at the local level. It is becoming an issue. Then the federal government have to come in to stop it.
Yeah, these
thank
are
you so
all good ideas, Eva. And I just feel like the farming industry, farmers in general, in different parts of Africa, have never had the support and the resources that they need to really deploy themselves and to grow this sector. And it's just discouraging sometimes to hear about the stories with the Fulani herdsmen. But I think for me personally, the story of the farmers that just won the case is very, very encouraging. It speaks of resilience. It speaks of courage. And today, if anything, for those that are watching, please take it as a message for yourself to never give up. 13 years is a very long time to be waiting for a court case, and look what happened. So I just want to encourage all of you who have been connected today and listening to us. Continue in whatever that you are doing. As long as you make steps going forward slowly, you will eventually get there. This is a wrap. It's been a pleasure to have you today, and thank you again for connecting to this week. We hope that you will join us again 2 weeks from today. In the meantime, we invite you to hit that subscribe button, connect with us on YouTube, connect with us on Discord. On Discord, we continue our discussions. We keep this conversation going. So we hope that you will join us over there. And for all of you here who were with me live, thank you so much. And we hope to see you soon again.